You arrive here quietly curious, carrying all the questions you rarely dare to ask out loud. What makes you so compelling that someone can't look away? What hidden forces pull you toward those you can't seem to forget? Welcome in this time. Together, you'll slip beneath the polite surfaces and examine the darker undercurrents that shape attraction. You might not like every reflection you find, but each is a chance to understand the parts of yourself you've hidden or denied. You notice it first in the smallest moments, a glance you hold too long, the soft thrill that rises when you realize someone is watching you. You tell yourself it's harmless, just a flicker of interest. But beneath the surface, something older stirs, a shadow desire, the kind Carl Jung described as the disowned parts of your psyche, begins to uncoil. You feel it in the warm flush across your throat, the subtle tightening of your stomach. A primal ache that whispers, you want to be seen, not just admired, but recognized for everything you secretly are. This craving doesn't announce itself politely. It slithers between your rational thoughts, wrapping round your sense of control. You might pretend you're above it, that you're too evolved to need such base validation. But the truth is simpler. You are human, and to be human is to wrestle with hunger you didn't choose. You catch yourself recalling the way he looked at you, the way his attention lit something you pretend not to need. You replay the moment, savoring its edges. Part of you scolds yourself for this indulgence. Another part, a part more honest, revels in it. You realize your desire is not pure or delicate. It is a complicated creature with sharp teeth. It doesn't only crave love. It craves power, recognition, the confirmation that you can stir longing in someone else. This is the dark psychology of female attraction, the collision of wanting and being wanted, of vulnerability tangled with domination. And as you stand here, quietly aware, you feel the first flicker of liberation, because when you name a shadow, it loses some of its hold. The desire remains, but it no longer owns you entirely. You watch it like a curious observer, fascinated by its persistence, its refusal to disappear. You slip into the familiar comfort of the mask, the one you've spent years perfecting. It looks so gentle from the outside, your patient smile, the softness in your eyes, the easy way you pretend nothing touches you too deeply. But under this delicate veil, you're aware of something far less innocent. A feral hunger hums beneath your polite composure. You wear this persona like a silk glove, believing it shields you from scrutiny, that it makes your longing look palatable. You tell yourself that if you seem composed enough, restrained enough, no one will suspect the restless craving vibrating under your skin. The mask is an exquisite trick. It lets you offer just enough to feel desired, but never so much that you appear desperate. You discover that playing innocent can be more powerful than any overt seduction. There's something magnetic about the suggestion of purity, of unspoiled sweetness, that invites others to lean in closer, hoping to be the one who awakens your deeper passions. You start to notice the contradiction. The more you pretend to have no hunger, the more enticing you become. And perhaps that's why you cling so tightly to the performance, because behind it lies a fear you can't quite name. The fear that if you reveal the rawness of your wanting, you will be abandoned or dismissed, so you become an actress in your own life, rehearsing expressions in the mirror, studying the tone of your voice until it sounds like effortless disinterest. You even convince yourself, sometimes, that the mask is real. Yet in quieter moments when no one is looking, you feel the truth pressing against your ribs. You want to be chosen. You want to be devoured by a gaze that sees every contradiction in you and doesn't turn away. The mask of innocence is your armor and your cage. It hides your hunger behind a smile so perfect it almost fools you. Almost. But some part of you knows this borrowed sweetness can't last forever. Eventually, the mask slips, and what's underneath demands to be seen. Like a moth that keeps fluttering toward a flame it claims not to need, you find yourself drawn to the possibility that someone might recognize your hidden ache and still choose you. You catch yourself believing the story that your attraction is accidental, that it simply happens without your consent. But if you look closer, you see the invisible threads you've been spinning, almost without thought. These are the games of projection, the subtle illusions that let you keep your longing at a safe distance. You find it easier to place your own hidden desires onto him, to imagine he is the one consumed with need, that his fascination is stronger than yours. It feels cleaner that way, less exposing, less humiliating. You notice how your mind constructs elaborate fantasies about who he must be, layering your hopes and wounds over the reality of his presence. He becomes the vessel for everything you dare not claim inside yourself. When he looks at you, you pretend the heat you feel belongs only to him. When he pulls away, you tell yourself it's because he is afraid of the intensity he senses, not because you are afraid of your own. Projection is a clever trick. It gives you permission to stay passive, to avoid the risk of naming what you want outright. You can linger in the delicious in-between where nothing has to be real. The fantasy is always more perfect than the truth. You imagine he is the rescuer, the judge, the worshipper, the one who will finally confirm your worth. And all the while, you remain safely hidden behind the illusion. Yet there is a cost to this protection. You notice how you begin to crave the fantasy more than the actual connection. You see him not as his, but as the mirror for your disowned hunger. This is what you meant when he spoke of projection as the greatest source of human misunderstanding. Because while you are busy casting your own shadow onto someone else, you never meet them at all, and they never meet you. The projection becomes a screen between your soul and theirs, a shimmering mirage that keeps you both alone in your separate longing. But sometimes, just for an instant, the illusion thins. You glimpse the ordinary man behind your stories, and you glimpse yourself raw, exposed, wanting. In that moment, you understand that every projection is an invitation to reclaim what you disowned. And the first step is admitting that the desire you see in his eyes has always been your own. You notice how easily you slip into the role of the one who retreats. It begins as a quiet decision to take a little more space, to answer a little slower, to let his messages wait unanswered just long enough to stir his uncertainty. At first, you tell yourself it's nothing. You're simply busy, perhaps a bit distracted, but under that polite rationalization, you sense something sharper. Withdrawal has its own intoxication. It becomes a quiet instrument you learn to play one, that transforms your absence into a law more powerful than any words. You discover that when you pull back, he leans forward. When you withhold, he begins to wonder what he did wrong. This small power tastes sweet, almost too sweet. It soothes the ache of your own insecurity, replacing the fear of rejection with the thrill of control. You think of Jung's insight that what you deny in yourself becomes your fate. And here it is. The fear of not being wanted becomes the compulsion to create want in others. You catch yourself watching the dance from a distance, part of you quietly amused by how predictable it all feels. The more you withdraw, the more you are pursued. The more you seem content alone, the more urgent his need to close the gap. This is the paradox of human desire. Nothing hooks attention like partial availability. You become the unanswered question he can't stop trying to solve. You feel his curiosity building, his efforts intensifying, and though you pretend to be indifferent, you know you're not. You crave the reassurance hidden in his pursuit. His longing becomes proof that you matter, that you have the power to shape his emotional weather. You notice how easily it can slip from subtle to manipulative, the impulse to create uncertainty, to withhold affection until he proves himself worthy, begins to feel like a game you can't stop playing. Each time you pull away, the power rushes in to fill the space. But there is a cost in the quiet hours. You sense how much of this theater is rooted in your own fear of exposure. Because if you showed yourself fully, if you met him without shields, you would have to risk the possibility that he might walk away. So instead, you turn absence into your currency, trusting that if you disappear just enough, he will never look anywhere else. You catch the flicker of recognition in yourself when you read about archetypes, the ancient patterns that live beneath your conscious mind. You never thought of your behavior as archetypal, but now you see the outlines, unmistakable and familiar. Some days, you notice the maiden in you, all luminous innocence and co-wonder. She delights in being chosen, in inspiring protectiveness, in the story that her sweetness is her greatest asset. Other days, the siren stirs awake, unfurling in you a deep, sensual awareness. She doesn't merely hope to be wanted, she expects it. She tastes the air for the subtle shifts in attention. The quickened breath, the dilation of a pupil, her power is not softness, but the quiet promise of chaos. And then there is the queen, steadfast, proud, cloaked in the knowledge that she does not chase. She draws others by the force of her certainty. Her gaze level and unwavering. You begin to realize that these archetypes slip through you like different costumes, chosen according to the moment, the man, the fear that you might be invisible without them. You tell yourself that this is simply your personality, but in truth, these are ancient scripts, older than memory, etched into the collective unconscious Jung described. You didn't invent them, you inherited them. You sense how each archetype satisfies a hidden longing, to feel worshipped, to feel safe, to feel unchallenged. Each one allows you to avoid the unadorned reality of who you are without performance, and yet, there's an undeniable thrill in embodying them. When you step into the siren silhouette, you feel alive in your skin. When you wear the queen's crown, your fear dissolves into regal composure. The archetypes protect you from uncertainty, but they also trap you inside a story that repeats itself again and again until you recognize you're more than any singular role. Sometimes you glimpse the truth in the quiet after the performance ends. You are all of them and none of them, a shifting constellation of impulses, stories, and shadows, and in that recognition, something softens. You understand that the power of these patterns lies not in denying them, but in seeing them. Clearly so, you can choose when to step in and when to step away. You think you are simply drawn to certain men because of their charm, their presence, the way they fill a room with an easy authority. But if you look closer, you begin to sense the wound beneath your wanting. It isn't merely about attraction, it is the ache of something much older, something that first took shape in the shadows of your earliest memories. You notice how desire disguises the unfinished grief of 1,000 unmet needs. The longing to be chosen becomes a way to soothe the raw places where you felt unseen. You can almost trace the invisible scar down the center of your chest, the one left by moments you don't fully remember but have never stopped feeling. When he looks at you with that spark of fascination, you taste the relief of finally being enough. You imagine that his attention will stitch the wound closed, that his desire will be the proof you are never too much or too little. But if you let yourself be honest, you know the relief is always temporary. Like a drop of morphine, it dulls the pain but never cures it. You catch yourself reaching for him in moments when your own self-doubt grows too loud. His presence becomes a distraction from the quiet voice that keeps whispering you are unworthy without another's validation. This is the dark psychology of attraction. You think you are seeking love, but sometimes you are only seeking relief. Jung spoke of this as the compulsion to repeat the unconscious strive to recreate old wounds so you might final. Why master them? You begin to see how every entanglement has a familiar flavor, a certain rhythm of hope and disappointment. You realize that no matter how many faces it wears, the story underneath is always the same. You are searching for someone to confirm your worth because you have not yet claimed it for yourself. It is a humbling revelation, almost embarrassing, in its simplicity. But it is also a doorway to freedom. Because when you see the wound for what it is, you are no longer ruled by it. You can choose to seek connection without the hidden bargain of salvation. You can desire without needing your desire to heal you. And in that space, something in you begins to grow, something sturdier than longing, something closer to peace. You begin to understand that not everything must be confessed. There is a strange power in holding part of yourself back, in offering only glimpses instead of the whole story. You feel it when you let your secrets linger behind your eyes, when you smile but never quite explain why. This is the alchemy of mystery, the magnetic pull of selective revelation. You discover that men are drawn not to the neatness of your disclosures, but to the unanswered questions you leave behind. You sense how your mystery becomes a living thing, coiling round their curiosity like ivy on a stone wall. When you reveal everything too quickly, you feel the energy flatten, the intrigue evaporates, replaced by something safe and slightly dull. But when you allow space for interpretation, when you leave the door half open, you notice how their fascination grows. It is not deceit, it is an art. The art of offering just enough truth to feel intimate, but never so much that the mystery dissolves. Jung spoke of the anima, the inner feminine figure who embodies both the law and elusiveness. You feel her stepping forward each time you choose to remain partly opaque, partly unknowable. She is the part of you who understands that your value is not measured by how quickly you can be understood. You watch how men strain to decipher your silences, how they replay your words in their minds, searching for hidden meanings. You become the question that refuses to be answered in a single conversation. This does not mean you are manipulative. It means you have learned the difference between transparency and self-abandonment. There is a dignity in protecting the depths of your heart, in keeping something sacred for yourself. You start to realize that being an enigma does not mean you are withholding love. It means you are honoring the complexity of who you are. You are no longer afraid to be a labyrinth that others must choose to explore, and in this choice to reveal selectively, to remain partly veiled, you feel a new confidence rising. You no longer need to over-explain or apologize for your depth. You are content to be a mystery that unfolds in its own time, to be the echo of a question that no one can answer completely. You begin to see how easily the desire to be loved can twist into the desire to be in control. It feels harmless at first, just small choices, little adjustments to how you present yourself. You tell yourself it's only self-protection. But under that innocent veneer, you feel the thrill that comes from shaping perception. You notice how carefully you craft your responses, how you measure your reactions so they reveal just enough vulnerability to seem authentic, but never enough to leave you exposed. This is the shadow of control, the impulse to choreograph every interaction so you never have to face rejection on its own terms. You remember Jung's warning that the shadow is most dangerous when it masquerades as virtue. You convince yourself that you are simply discerning, that you are setting healthy boundaries. But sometimes, when you are honest, you see how much of it is about making sure you are always one step ahead, never caught off guard, never truly powerless. You sense how intoxicating it is to watch him second-guess himself, to see him wonder if he has displeased you, to feel the subtle shift in the dynamic when you withdraw your warmth. It feels like proof that you matter, like evidence that you are not as vulnerable as you secretly fear. You realize this is not love. This is strategy. A quiet campaign to keep your heart safe by never fully surrendering it. You tell yourself that if you can control the story, you can control the ending. But there is a cost to this performance. The more you curate your image, the less intimacy you feel. You begin to sense the loneliness that grows in the spaces where authenticity has been replaced with calculation. You start to wonder if anyone truly knows you, or if they only know the character you have so painstakingly created. And there, in that soft ink, you glimpse the deeper truth. The very control you clutch so tightly is the thing that keeps you from the connection you claim to crave. The paradox is cruel. The more you try to guarantee you will never be hurt, the more you guarantee you will never be loved completely. You feel a quiet weariness in this realization, and perhaps a small relief, because naming the shadow is the first step toward releasing it. You start to see how your presence becomes a mirror, reflecting back to him the parts of himself he has never dared to face. At first, it flatters you the way he seems captivated by your attention, the way his confidence wavers when you look at him too closely. You notice how easily you can trigger his insecurities without ever raising your voice. It happens in the way you tilt your head when he brags, the way you go silent when he expects reassurance, the way your eyes soften when he confesses a fear he thought he had hidden. You become the silent witness to his private doubts, and you feel the weight of that unspoken power. Jung believed we are all haunted by the parts of ourselves we refuse to acknowledge. And here you are, an embodiment of his hidden anxieties and secret hopes. You feel the paradox of it. The more he wants your approval, the more he is unsettled by how much it matters. You sense how your allure is never just about beauty or charm. It is about the way you make him question himself. The way your attention feels like both a blessing and a threat. You catch the flicker in his eyes when he realizes he cannot impress you with the usual games. You watch the discomfort that rises when he senses you see past the polished exterior into the messy truth he tries to bury. Sometimes, you wonder if this is what you have been seeking all along, not just connection, but the quiet satisfaction of knowing you can unnerve him. That you can make him feel as exposed as you often do. There is something strangely intimate about this dynamic, something that feels truer than the polite scripts of dating. You are no longer pretending that attraction is pure or harmless. You see how it is laced with power, how it stirs up the parts of both of you that would rather stay asleep. And yet, you also sense the tenderness beneath the discomfort, because in showing each other your shadows, you offer something real, a chance to meet without illusions. You feel a hush in your chest as you realize that true closeness will always require this mutual disarmament. You cannot be the mirror without being seen yourself. You feel the stirring of something softer as you begin to gather all the fragments, the masks, the projections, the hunger, the games, and hold them in the same patient gaze. There is no longer any thrill in pretending you are above it all. You see clearly now how much of your attraction has been shaped by what you refuse to see in yourself. You begin to sense that integration is not about abolishing your desire or banishing your shadows. It is about letting them stand beside you without shame. You recall how often you tried to control the narrative, to sculpt yourself into the perfect blend of captivating and invulnerable, to seduce without ever admitting that you, too, long to be chosen. But here, in this quiet reckoning, you feel something in you unclench. You are tired of rehearsing, tired of offering only the pieces of yourself that feel safe to reveal. You begin to understand what you meant when he said the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. Because here, without your masks or your careful performances, you are both softer and stronger than you imagined. You notice how the compulsion to seduce loses its urgency when you no longer need another's gaze to confirm your worth. You feel the gravity of your own wholeness, how it allows you to stand in your longing without Apollo, and without expectation, attraction, becomes less about filling an emptiness and more about sharing a fullness. You no longer have to orchestrate desire to feel alive. You can simply allow it to rise, to ebb and flow, without gripping it in your fist. This is the quiet liberation of integration, the realization that no part of you needs to be exiled. The siren, the queen, the maiden, the strategist, they are all expressions of a deeper, richer self. You are not here to abolish them, but to understand them, to choose their influence consciously rather than be ruled by it. And as you stand in this awareness, you feel an unexpected tenderness toward the woman you have been all her clever defenses, all her hidden wounds, all her secret dreams of being seen. You understand now that freedom was never about outgrowing your shadows. It was about inviting them home. You sit here now, feeling the quiet aftertaste of everything you've uncovered. It's a delicate thing, this realization that your desire was never something to be ashamed of, nor something to flaunt in triumph. It was simply a part of you, vital, raw, and deeply human. You begin to sense that no relationship, no moment of longing, has been wasted. Each has brought you a step closer to this place of deeper seeing, where you can name your shadows without letting them lead. You notice that you are no longer a collection of masks and strategies. You are a whole person, capable of intimacy that doesn't demand perfection or constant proof. As you rise from this exploration, you feel something settling in your bones, a steadiness, a kind of knowing that can't be shaken by whether someone else chooses you, because you have already chosen yourself, and in that choice, you claim the freedom to love without needing your love to complete you. If this reflection spoke to you, I invite you to like this video, share it with someone who may be carrying their own hidden hunger, and leave a comment about what resonated most or what you've discovered in your own journey. In the next video, we'll continue exploring the delicate dance between self-awareness and emotional boundaries, so you can keep uncovering the deepest truths of your heart.